Hello, hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good, good, good. I'm gonna record this this lesson or whatever you want to call it. What am I trying to say? The take up of assignment 3, just in case anyone misses it, because it could be kind of important for assignment number 4. You know, I was using I don't know if any of you guys stream on Twitch or whatever, but I am using OBS to record, and it was taking up a ton of CPU, which is why I wasn't really recording our lectures. But I think I figured it out. It dropped it down to like 10%, so I think this should be okay. But yeah, we'll give it a shot. If it works out, I'll upload it to YouTube, and you guys can have a look at it. Let's see here. Okay, so let's quickly go over this. So for the recording, this is PROG1800, summer 2021. Let's see here. So we're taking up assignment number 3. It says, in this assignment, you are to develop a web application for an online store. The type of store that you design and its inventory is left to your decision. This is pretty critical in assignment 4. If you just did product 1, 2, and 3 like this layout, you're going to lose 5 marks. So make sure you don't forget about that in assignment number 4. So here it says, the front end must collect all the information needed, blah, blah, blah. Similar to assignment 2, I mean, we have to change some of the things in here for it. And then this is the second part that I think there was a lot of confusion on. I haven't graded assignment 3 yet, so I don't know. You guys just handed it in. But this says JavaScript form validation. So watch out for this wording on the final as well. Because when it says JavaScript form validation, this has to be client side. Because you can't validate a form really inside of, well, I'll rephrase this. You can't use JavaScript to validate the form inside of Node or inside of Express. So this is client-side JavaScript. And it says all the JavaScript code must be located in an external script file. That means you would have, the script tag with the SRC that points to the JavaScript. Then we'll have this mandatory fields and the 2 fields for the regular expressions, and so on and so forth. Then it says server-side programming using JavaScript, EJS, Express, and Node. Generate the receipt, calculate and include the sales tax and all of this stuff. This assignment is probably the most difficult one in the course. Assignment 4 is a lot quicker, but that's why I wanted to take this up. So let's just get started here. So the first thing that I would do is obviously make a new project. And I would do it inside of, whatever directory. Let's see here, projects. Stoga. Yeah, this was, and for the people that are watching this on YouTube, I'm reading Discord here. Someone says, this assignment was challenging. Yeah, it was. It's probably the most difficult one. I would say it's not difficult. I would say it's time consuming. So I'm going to go through this quickly. Hopefully we can get it done within the hour here. I'm pretty sure we can. So anyway, I made a new directory, called it AS3. And then I will use my npm initiate. This is assuming that you already have Node installed and npm installed. And I will just call it AS3. Description can be, whatever you want. Assignment number 3, 1800. Our entry point will be index.js. So this will be the file that we create that houses our Node program. And we don't need any of this stuff. Author, we can put in your name. And then, you can put in your student number. That would make grading stuff a lot easier for me. And then you just type in yes. So this should create our package.json file. which I'm going to open in Visual Studio Code. And again, I'm going to go through this quickly, so I'm going to talk us through it, but I'm going to paste in a lot of this code, so you guys can look at this later, pause the video, or whatever you want to do. So don't forget, we have to tell our program, we're creating a Node program, and we have to tell it that we would like to use a couple libraries that people have made, or they're also known as dependencies. So we want to use Express and EJS and this other thing called body parser, which we'll talk about later. It's included now. But we paste in these three dependencies, and we save our program, or we save our initiate file. And then after we do that, we want to install our libraries. So we do npm install. And while this is doing that, obviously it's going to read this JSON file, which will then install all of the packages into our software. So just wait for this. And you can see it's creating our directory called node modules, which it will be downloading or installing the modules that we need. So if you recall, inside of my package.json, I've told the program that index.js will be our main file, so we have to create our index file, which we'll do. So I'm just going to use a text document, index.js. Don't forget, if you're in Windows, you'll want to make sure that you don't have, what am I trying to say, under view, you want to say show file name extensions, because if you don't, this will be index.js.txt, and you won't see the .txt, which will really kind of screw you up. Anyway, I'm going to bring this over to Visual Studio Code. It is kind of slow still with this video recording, but we'll make do. Okay, so we get our bare bones. And now we want to set up our node program. And this is much like if you're following along with the labs and all of that. You can make your base program. On the final, I'm gonna give you a template that you can use, so that you don't have to like memorize essentially adding all of these dependencies yourself. So you're gonna not have to do this, even though you have access to this stuff. I'm gonna paste this in. And then we have to instantiate our Express app. So we do var and then I'm going to tell my app that we want to use body parser. And do we want to do that? Hold on a second. Yeah, we do. We'll use parser. So the URL encoded thing that we're using here is so that we can pass data from our form. We'll be doing that later on into our node program, and we want to use the same for the JSON. And then we also want to set up our path for EJS. So if you remember, EJS is our view dependency, and we're going to tell, and I'm just pasting this in again, I'm going to tell our Express what engine we're going to use, which is EJS. Then I'm going to tell also tell Express what path that our EJS files will be located in, and that's in views. And I'm also going to tell Express, which is kind of unrelated to EJS, where I want to keep my static files. So you'll notice that this has underscore dir name, which is sometimes confusing, but this is actually part of the path library. And this will, instead of actually putting in the full qualified directory name, this will just wherever your file is located, it's gonna replace this dir name with your actual directory. It's handy if I'm marking or if I'm grading your program. You know, I'm not gonna have your C projects whatever folder, so that's the reason why this is there. But since I've added those two directories to the code, I'm gonna add them to our program. I'm gonna make a view folder. And I'm going to make the public folder. And I will come back and comment this before or actually I'm not going to upload this, so maybe I should comment it now. You should comment this kind of stuff on the final as well. Simple stuff like that. And what else? Then I'm gonna tell my app that I would like for it to listen on a specific port, and we're gonna use 8080. And remember, I told you a little bit about 8080 and just regular 80 in class. I won't go through that in here. Then I'm just gonna do a console log. Just to show that my program is running. And we talked about localhost. All of that wonderful stuff before. Okay, so this is the basic program. And this is likely what you're going to get on the final. So there's going to be, you won't have to memorize this stuff, but so let's just make sure my program works. I'm going to do node.index.js. And looks like I have a typo. Remember, this is common. You want to run your program every couple minutes or every time you change a bunch of your code. And don't instantly message me and say I have an issue. It will tell you what the issue is right here. So I can actually see on line 8, it says myapp.use body parser. And I can visually see that there's 2 Y's in there. But look, the error continues. It says reference error, body parser is not defined. So even if you didn't see this double Y, this is actually telling you, look, body parser is not in this software at all. It's not in a library. There's something wrong with this. And then in our case, it's just a typo. So that should solve that. And we'll run the program again. And you can see the site's running. So that's all good. So our site is good. This is a deprecated function. We'll talk about that later as well. Don't worry too much about it. Next thing I want to do is I want to set up my first get for our web page. So I would like to set that up as my index. And I just pasted this in. So this is my route for the root folder, which is index. So I'm actually going to create a new EJS file called index. And I'm going to open this file in Visual Studio Code. Now I can test this right now. I could run my server. I'll open up Chrome. And again, sorry, this is slow because I am recording this. Oops, sorry, localhost. So it says failed to look up view index in views directory. So what did I do wrong? Oh, I can see. Can anyone see what the problem is? I'm just going to pause the video. Correct. So if you didn't catch that, it says failed to look up view in index in the views directory, right? So this is an error you guys might get, another typo on my behalf. I called my folder view, but inside of my code, I told the system that I would have my items in the views folder, right? So let's just change the name of my folder. Now you can change it over here in the directory, or you could actually just change this if you wanted to. I'm going to name it views, so I'm going to refresh my page. And now you can see everything's fine. This index is blank, obviously, but my program is working. And you can just type hello world if you wanted to test this out. And when I refresh my page, it's so slow. Oh my god. No, I want to save. Come on. Sorry, this screen recording is really slow. Oh, I have to restart my program here. And whenever you make a change, this index file I dragged and dropped from the view folder, and when I did a save on it, it actually recreated the view folder because this file wasn't there. So just be careful. I'm moving kind of quick here. So let's close this file. Let's not save it. I'm going to delete the view folder. And I'll open it again in views. And back to here. Now I'll save my hello world, and it should be on the screen, which it is, as you can see. So everything works as expected. In the assignment, I'm not sure if it asked you to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So in the lab, it said make a header and a footer. So I'm going to do that right now because it is on the final, and I think it asks you in assignment 4. I'm pretty sure it does. But if you recall, we will actually make like a template that we can use. And the template would look something like this. So we're going to make a header file. And I like to prefix it with an underscore if it's like a partial file. And if it's shared throughout the entire software package. That means it actually goes up at the top of the directory structure if you're in Windows. So I'll open up header.ejs. And this is really slow on recording. I'll do the same for footer. Open this. And I'm going to just copy and paste some code in here. Let's see. So this will be the start of my document. And then in my footer will be the end. So it should be /body and /HTML. Save that. And then in my index file, I'm going to include the header. Come on, computer. And I'll include the footer. And we can have our hello world here if we want. So now I should have a completed, oh, I don't need this. I guess if I want a title here, we can. It could be my store. And this could be okay, so if this works, we should have our completed web page. You can see it says my store and then hello world. And then if you go to actual view the page source, you can see it's a complete valid HTML page. So there's the header at the top, and then there's the footer. You guys should know this. It should be relatively simple. Any questions so far? Okay, so no real questions. So now, basically, I haven't even really done anything for marks yet. I've just set up the program to run. Now, again, this is what kind of made AS3 really difficult, because you had to do all of this stuff. But again, I'm going to give you at least this index file on the final. The good thing is for AS4, you can also reuse this stuff. So let's move on to the static content. It says the front end must collect all the information needed to mail out the purchased items to the customer. So I'm just going to copy this kind of form, and I'm going to put it right in my index file. And I'm going to actually, I guess we can actually just do it this way. So I'm going to call my form input, and we're going to have input. And what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11. Okay. Address. City. And don't worry, we'll come back and fix the drop-down boxes. I just want to get this going.
Are we following the same technique in the midterm? Like we put the output, then the invoice, then after that we start doing the coding?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Like, are we following the same techniques for the midterm? Like you put the uh, the form, then the invoice, like what you like to see. Then after that you start do the coding and the calculation and other stuff.
Yeah, personally, I like to create all of the forms first to give you an idea of what you need to do, and then you can do the code, but you don't have to do that. You can do whatever you want. So,
No, that's good. And after that you ship 1 or 2 error messages. Then after that you do them all.
yeah, you should code however you want to do it. I'm just showing you like a technique that I would use. So I think it's a lot easier to visually see your program kind of coming together, and then you can do the code, because then you can like click on stuff, and if you forgot anything, that kind of stuff.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. And this should be delivery. Now remember, I'm going to use product 1, 2, and 3 here just because, I don't know what you guys are going to use, but you should make up your own product. And then this provinces should be a drop-down list, according to this. And we do that by making it, instead of an input, we make it a select. And then we can add our options. So I'm only going to do like 2 here. There's no real, I don't want to do, let me rephrase, you don't need me to do all of them. And we'll just do Alberta or something. And the same for our delivery options. On the final, I don't think I'll give you as many, we'll see, as many text boxes, because I know this takes some time to do. And just for this sample, I'm only going to do just 2 examples here. Oops. There were 13. There were 13 provinces. Yeah, I know there are 13 provinces. I'm saying that I don't need to do all 13 to show you how this works. And then we'll close the form, which we did, and then we need to have a submit button. And then we'll just, again, you should probably, in real life, make sure you, you know, space this out in divs and use your CSS, but that's not really what this course is about. So we'll just paste this in here for now. And if I refresh my store, I should have my text boxes, which I do, and then I should label them. I know this is boring because you guys have done this 100 times, but we'll get there in a second. That looks all good. Oh, why isn't my drop down not working? Oh, shit. There we go. Let's see what else do we need. So we also need our invoice, which again you should format appropriately, but we'll just do it quick here so we can get through this really fast, or faster. But I will make a new EJS file, call it. In fact, I'm going to copy my index one just to save time. And I'll call it receipt. I'm going to spell it right though. Actually, I'll call it invoice because that's what it's called, right? Call it receipt, whatever you want. I'm going to open in Visual Studio. VS Code. And I'll just modify this. So this will say, let's see, invoice. And these don't have to be inputs anymore, although you could leave it if you wanted to. But we'll just make them, let's say, a span. We don't need our input button, and then we need the spaces for this other stuff. So whatever the product is, plus the shipping charges and the total and subtotal. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we'll do that too. So we'll just do, let's see. Guess we can do that inside of there, and shipping charges. Subtotal, taxes total. Notice I'm just setting this HTML up right, like it's not doing anything yet. This is just all the setup. And we'll have to come back to this later when we're going to actually input these values, but we will come back to that. I want to get this running first. I just wanted to have the basic setup, and I don't need this in a form. This could actually be a div. I'll call it output. I just want to make sure that this works. So I'm also going to add my my route for this, for the receipt or the invoice. And I'll restart my server. And now if I go to /invoice, I should get my page, which I do. Looks like we're set up, 99%. Okay, any questions on that? It was pretty simple so far. Questions? Me in the recording. So there's no questions. So this is, I added the route, and what else do we got here? So I'm going to add my route for the post in my index function. So remember that when I click the submit button in my index.ejs, it has to go somewhere. So I'm going to make it go to this post. And again, I'm kind of just taking this up. We've explained this in class, how this works. Obviously, when you we talked about the differences between gets and set or gets and posts in class, so I'm not going to cover that again. And in our post function, we should render. Let's see. We should render our receipt, or our, let me rephrase my invoice. Oh God. I have to find new recording software or something. It's ridiculous. Invoice. Which also, you know, kind of, let's make sure this is right. I added a route for invoice to get here, but we don't need it if we're actually rendering it inside of our index. So I can actually get rid of this route if I want to, and just have our post function. And let's go back to our index.ejs because I don't think I did anything up here. I didn't. So I'm gonna have to tell my form what I want it to do when I click this submit button down here. So I'm gonna actually say I'm gonna do a post method. Okay. Post, and you know we can tell it what action we want to do. And when I say action, this would be the route. Like, so they don't call it a route up here, but the action. Again, this is part of MVC and all this stuff you guys learned in another program, 2230 in particular. But we're just going to say call this action or this route, which would be this post function. So at the very outside, if I refresh my page, if I restart my server, and I refresh, if I click place order here, it should show my invoice, which it does. So we know that's all working. We know that my post function works. We know that I'm rendering the invoice properly. So that's awesome. So the next thing I would do, I still haven't even talked about calculations yet, and I don't think I'm going to. I mean, not yet, but we haven't even talked about the validation stuff, which we're gonna. But I think I'm gonna actually. What should we do? Should we generate the scripts? This stuff should be relatively simple. I'll do a couple examples for this. Let's do that right now. So all I asked for you in this assignment was basically take stuff you learned from assignment 2 and insert it into your code here. So I wanted you to do a mandatory field, and like you could have done a regex or whatever. But the point was I wanted you to know how the public directory worked and how to differentiate between client-side JavaScript and not a server-side for Node. Okay, so this is where that document.get element by ID comes into play. So let's just see here. So first thing I want to do is I want to create a JavaScript file. And I'm going to put it in my public folder. And I'm just going to call it my script. Script.js. Okay, and then I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to try to. I cannot stand how slow this is, but whatever. Okay, so now I have my JavaScript file, and I'm also going to include it in my header. So I'm just going to do it like how we did it in all of our other, in our assignment 2 or in assignment 1. My script. Okay, and notice I don't have to put the public directory here because Node will or Express will already know that these static files should be in the public directory. So this got my script.js. And you can check this by just refreshing your page and then checking to see if you have any errors. So you can open up Inspector, go to Console. And you can see I don't have any errors. If this file wasn't found or something was wrong, you would get an error down here. See here it says, get cannot 404. So 404 is it can't find the file. So we know that my script file is working. And now I can do validations inside of here if I want to, okay? Which is what this program was asking me to do. Questions so far? Did I miss anything?
Can you just explain quickly how do you did the drop-down list?
Yep. So before I do that, let's just talk about one more thing so I don't get off track here. So one last thing is this form, it gets submitted to the post method using the index route, which we've talked about, right? Which will go to this post function right here. But I also want it to run my JavaScript code. So remember that I can have a function in here called like submission. And if you recall, we have to return false so that our postback doesn't happen when it's actually running in this inside of this JavaScript. So don't forget to do up here an onSubmit. I just want to show you this real quick. So what will happen is when I click the submit button, this JavaScript will get ran first, and then the post method will happen. So that's how you validate these fields. I just wanted to cover that before we moved on. And I can show you how this works here. Let's just see. You're muted? Oh, shit. When did I get muted? Damn it. I'm going to go back. How far back was that? Did you hear me say anything about the JavaScript stuff? 30 seconds? Sorry. Okay, I'll go back to this. No, you didn't hear anything about the JavaScript? Okay, so I'll change this. One more thing before we move on. So remember this return false and return true thing. So if I have this return submission set to false, your post method is not going to get ran. So in this scenario, we actually have to return true in order for this to get ran. And now we would only return true if all of these conditions are met. So I'm going to show you what that means in a second. So like, for example, I'm going to place my order here. And you can see I get my hello world pop-up, which would be this alert. And then I click OK, and then you can see I get my invoice because I've said, yeah, go ahead and do the post back. Now, imagine in here we actually have some code. So for example, if I had if document.getElementById, and we'll just use name, for example, dot value equals blank. Then we can show the error on the screen. Again, I don't have to go through this. We did this in assignment 2, but we'll just do an alert. Blank. So if this triggers, I want to actually do a return false because I want to stop my post back from happening. So what will happen is, if name is blank, I'm going to get the alert that says it cannot be blank. You should actually put in error, plus equals name cannot be blank, and then display that on the screen. I'm not going to show you how to do that. You already know how to do it. But I just want you to see that this is how you do the client-side validation as well as the server-side validation. So I'll just show you how this works. So if I refresh my page, if there's nothing in here and my code is correct, I should get a pop-up that says name cannot be blank, and I stay on this page. If I type in my name and I click this place order, I go to my invoice. Does everyone understand that? I think that might have been a bit of confusion on the assignment number 3. Everyone with me on that? It's longer than I thought, but let's quickly get to the other code. So I'm not gonna do basically this server side script or this client side validation. You would just have to basically copy and paste the code that you had from your assignment 2. You do your 6 mandatory fields plus your regular expressions. As long as you had this return and false, then you should be okay. You have a question?
Do you have time for?
Okay, let's look at this server-side programming. So it says generate a receipt to give the customer, including all shipping documentation. So that's like the easiest part first, in my opinion. So I'm going to do that first. So all I'm going to do is inside of my post function, I'm going to set up a few variables, and then I'm going to pass them back to my EJS file. And remember yesterday, when I say pass them back, I'm not really passing them to the EJS. The EJS is being parsed by the parser and then filling in, placeholders. Like, for example, it's filling in the placeholder for this header. And then it's going to fill in this placeholder for the variables. So if I make a variable here called name, and I just set it to my name, and then in my EJS file, if I just do, let's say in my name span here, I just do name. Oops. Okay. 1 second. That's right. Sorry, I was just looking for the syntax. I should actually be able to see just my full name because I have the variable name here and it's filled in. It's hard coded right now, right? But let's just restart my server. And if I refresh this, what did I do wrong? It says name is not defined. Oh yeah, that's a great point. So, did anyone come across this issue? No. Oh, that's why I did. That's why. Oops. I put it in the wrong file. I put it in the index EJS, not the receipt. So if you see that, what's happening is when I run my program, there's no variable in this function in this route called name, right? I put it in the post route. So when I actually ran this function, when EJS tried to parse this index.EJS, it was looking for the variable called name, but it couldn't find it. So that's my fault in this case. I shouldn't have a variable in there. It should be in the receipt or the invoice, as we call it. I'm just going to move this over. And I'll put it right here. So now, if I fill this out, and what did I do now? Same problem, name is not defined. Why is it not defined? Here's name. This. Okay, does anyone see what my problem is? I can see it. I just want to see if you can see it.
It's the variable, not defined back. Not defined right.
Well, you're correct. So like you're partially correct. So it does say name is not defined, and I was saying that these like don't get passed. I mean, technically, it doesn't get passed. But let me put it this way: this is a function res.render, and I have to tell and like any function. If, for example, this was a function called like multiply, and I had two numbers in here, and like, you know, if it was like this and it would and the output would be, you know, whatever the num is. So this would be 4 if this is multiply. Yeah, you have to make it a property. So all I'm saying is that this render function is rendering the invoice EJS, but I'm not passing in name to it, right? So I actually have to pass. Now I'm not passing name to the EJS file. I'm passing it to this render engine, which will then insert the name function. Okay, so I'll just show you how to do that. Relatively simple. Yeah, exactly. And we won't go into details again of what this is, but this is effectively JSON. And you can see this. I will just organize it in such a way. So now I'm passing basically a JSON file or string into this render function, which will then get parsed by invoice. And you can see this name is the local variable name, and then this name, this second name here, hopefully you can see my mouse, is what will be interpreted by EJS. So let's try it again. And if I go back, I should be able to click place my order, and then you can see there's my name right there at the top. So that's step 1. That's how I would get this to work, step 1. Next step would be I want to get the data from the actual form. So how would we do that? We would just use the request and the body, and then I would just take name. So now what this will do is anything that I type in the form that is called name will get put into the name variable and then passed to the invoice and rendered. So I can try this again. So now if I type in Mike Smith and click place order, you can see I get the Mike Smith name up here. So we would do this for the rest of these, you know, email and whatever the other, you know, phone. And so on and so forth. And then you would just keep adding this to the invoice. Again, I'm not going to do them all. You guys should be able to figure this out. Relatively simple. Right, so then you would modify your invoice and put those outputs in here as well. Right, and then same thing would happen. Any questions on that so far? Questions, comments, thoughts? All right, so no questions. This is where I don't know if this was difficult for you guys or not, but now you basically have everything that you would need to do to run these calculations, because at the end of the day, this invoice, you know, outputting the name, the email, the phone number, to output the stuff for product, which should look like this, you know, product one, and these are quantities that we fill in. So all we really have to do is make our calculations inside of this JS file, which I didn't think was that difficult. So like, say for example, I would like to get the quantity of product one, right? I would just do something like rec.body.product one, and that would give me the quantity. And then if I want to, let's say my product one was worth, I don't know, $55.99, right? So I could do, let's say value product one equals $55.99, and var, let's say, what do we call this? Subtotal product one would just be product one's quantity multiplied by the value of the product. And then down here, all we'd have to do is send back, you know, product one, which would be subtotal product one. So I don't, like, this is why I didn't quite understand why people were having a hard time running the calculations, because you have everything you need. Just by passing these name, email, phone number, and stuff like that, I can do whatever I want in here. So now I can run my calculation. So in this case, I should be able to fill out the product one thing on the form, which if I named it right, which it is, this should multiply it by whatever the price was, which in my case is $59.99, and then put it into subtotal product, and then it should pass it back to my invoice, which would be over here. So I can actually, let's test this out. Product one. And if I save all this, let's just check it out. Some of the other problems is, when I'm writing a final or whatever, I wouldn't, even if you know how to do this, right, you'd still have to do 6 more lines of code. I would test this one line first, make sure it works, and then go back and do the rest of them. It's just, in my opinion, a lot easier. You can catch errors like that. So here's my sites running. I'm going to refresh my page. And notice I'm not hitting refresh because that would post it again. I just go to the URL, press enter. So I'm going to put in my name. And we'll do the rest here. Let's not put my real phone number. And so let's say I have 3 products. So hopefully this works. Let's try it out. Place order. So it does have an error. Let's say it says quantity product 1 is not defined. So quantity product 1. Okay, so I didn't name this variable right, so let's do that again. Don't forget, you have to restart your program. And in this case, I'm going to refresh the page because it's going to submit the exact same stuff. And it looks like it works, right? So here's my invoice, here's my name, email address, and then you can see product 1 is 167.97, and you know, if we take 55.99 and multiply it by 3, you can see that our output is correct. Does everyone get that? I didn't think it was that tricky, I guess. Everyone get that? The hardest part of this code is really, and it's not that difficult, it's just very time consuming, right? So for example, I'm not going to go through this, but remember that we have to calculate sales tax for the province, right? And like Saeed had said, you know, there's 13 provinces. So you actually have to code, whether it's in your actual post function or if you had a separate function completely. I saw people do this. I'll even post an example here. And they created a whole other function that just calculated sales tax. Let me just see if I can make this work. So here's somebody's function, and you know, all they did was they passed in the provinces, what delivery they wanted, and then the total. And this ran all of their calculations for them. So it wasn't that it was tough to do the calculations. It was just time consuming because you had to actually Google, find out, you know, what is the sales tax in Alberta? And then, you know, you could save yourself a little bit of time because the sales tax in Alberta is the same as Nunavut, the Northwest Territories, and Yukon, 5%. So then you can run that code. But that was really the time-consuming part for this assignment. But it really wasn't that difficult if you break it down kind of how I did it here. And then the same would go for the output of the total cost. So all I would do is I would run all of these calculations, and then I would sum them up and then just output the total. Something like that. Whatever all the products are. You would add them together, which I haven't done for all of them, but you get the idea. Does that make sense? Does anyone need me to go further with that?
Statement just for the calculation of the tax for each province.
Yeah, the question. Sorry, if people didn't hear it, the question was, and this is for the recording. Do you have to have multiple if statements? Yeah, you would, because remember, you're going to have a drop down of your provinces, right? So you would figure out what province the person has selected, and you could do that easily inside of your code here. Then once you determine whether it's, you know, Ontario, Alberta, or whatever, you'd have your if statement that would calculate the percentage for that province, and then that's basically it.
But within the if statement.
Okay, so the question was, you know, do we have to do it specifically how I'm showing you how to do it, or can you use multiple different ways? Like, can you use an if statement inside of your post route? The answer is yes. You can code this any which way you want, as long as it works. And I'm using this vaguely, and I'm putting my hands in the air for quotations. Typically, when you're programming, you want the most efficient way possible. So when I showed you just earlier there was a function that calculated the percentage. I would lean towards doing something like that because then I could reuse that function later. But it wouldn't be wrong for you necessarily to have your if statement inside of the post. I'll say it like this: you wouldn't lose any marks, but if you were doing it in real life for like a client or a business, you'd want to come up with the most efficient way to do it. So yeah, I would use a function. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so I think, and then we would have your regular programming standards, which would apply as per usual. So just make sure you comment this stuff. I've left this kind of blank, but again, on your final or assignment 4, make sure you comment all of this. Like, this is our route for index, and so on and so forth. Make sure you do stuff like this. This is calculations for product quantity, stuff like that. Otherwise, were there any other questions about assignment 3? Was this enough information to see where you may have gone wrong? I know I haven't graded them yet, but hopefully you're not like, oh shoot, I did it completely wrong, but I don't think you would have.
Yeah, the thing is, where to put the test, I think.
Yeah, like I said, you can really put them. You can put them right inside of this route if you want to. Personally, I would put them in another function, but it's entirely, in this scenario, up to you. In this class, again, this is kind of teaching you a lot of things, especially in the second part of this semester. It's showing you Node, server-side JavaScript, showing you how to use templates. It's basically showing you how to use a web server. So it's a lot of stuff, I understand. But in the future, make sure you're kind of using the best reusable code that you can use.